In Chile, researchers sent a robot underwater and stumbled upon a thriving ecosystem. More than 100 never-before-seen species of bright blue deep-sea dragonfish, humongous thread creatures, and colorful new coral. And this is only scratching the surface. The world bombards us with enough negativity, so sometimes it's nice to take a break. You've come to the right channel for a weekly dose of positivity. From a new cancer detector that works in a few seconds to new legislation that will keep water safe from forever chemicals, I'm Regis, and here are 7 good news stories from all around the world to brighten your week. Our first story takes us to the United Kingdom, where Liverpool is developing the world's largest tidal power project. First things first though, how exactly does tidal power work? As the name suggests, it's a way of capturing the energy from the movement of the water. Technology can harness this power in places where the difference between high tide and low tide is significant, like in the River Mersey, which empties into Liverpool Bay and the Irish Sea. Here, the difference in tide can reach as high as 10 meters. Now, this kind of technology isn't new, and in fact, Liverpool has been considering installing a barrage tidal system since 1924. The barrage version is where a low dam is built so that water can breach over the top. Doors on either side of a huge platform allow water to be trapped inside during high tide, and closed once the water level reduces again. Inside are a series of turbines that use the movement of incoming water to spin. Then, through a generator, mechanical energy is converted into electrical energy. If officially approved for development, Mersey Tidal would be the biggest government renewable energy project in all of the United Kingdom. On completion, it would have the capacity to supply 1 million homes with power all year round. That's a lot of power just from the movement of tides. However, with a long history of complications, there are still big challenges to overcome before this project gets underway. An early price tag of $4.3 billion has been set for the project, signaling just how determined the city is to make a splash in green energy with an old technology. In medicine, technology is pushing the field too, where a handheld breast cancer screening device has just been invented. More than 600,000 people die from breast cancer each year. The standard method of detection is through a physical exam and a mammogram, which is a kind of X-ray used to look for malignant lumps. These have a number of limitations though. For one, they're not always completely accurate and can produce false negatives. Missing a diagnosis in the early stages can mean the difference between life and death for a patient. Now, technology coming out of Taiwan looks to have changed all of that. Innovative scientists have designed a handheld device that can detect breast cancer, and it's nothing like a mammogram. Instead of an X-ray, it takes a small amount of saliva and tests it for specific biomarkers linked to breast cancer. The device processes the sample in a number of seconds, combining the saliva with a number of antibodies, and if they interact positively, it means the patient has breast cancer. It's the same basic idea as one of those old COVID test strips, only much more advanced. The capacity of this technology is just enormous. In the United States, mammograms typically cost hundreds of dollars, while MRIs can run into the thousands. The total cost of this new handheld device is around $5. It looks like one day we might be able to diagnose just about anything from the comfort of our own home. Next up, we have some good news for the environment in Indonesia, where a coral reef has recovered in just 4 years. Reefs are home to 32% of all marine life and are simply vital for biodiversity. But if we continue at this rate of destruction, experts predict that all coral reefs will disappear by 2070. However, there is hope coming from Indonesia. As part of the Mars Coral Reef Restoration Program, scientists have been experimenting with different ways of regrowing damaged coral. One of their methods uses hexagonal-shaped steel objects known as reef stars. These stand up on top of the reef and are weaved together, creating a safe environment for the reef to grow, and have already showed success on Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Now, the Mars Coral Reef Restoration has proved the true potential of these reef stars. Within the space of just 4 years, a damaged reef was restored back to the level of a healthy reef. A key measure was how much calcium carbonate was available, something that healthy reefs produce. They found that this amount tripled over the 4 years of observation, and now believe that reef stars could be a way forward for a cheap, fast, and safe way of saving marine life. Sometimes it really is just the most simple things that make a difference. Meanwhile, over in Canada, a very different kind of environmental protection effort is ongoing, with Indigenous groups leading a historic conservation agreement. There are almost 24 different Indigenous governments in Canada, and 4 out of 5 of those are located in the huge Northwest Territories. While it only has a population of less than 50,000 people, it contains hundreds of species of birds, rich biodiversity, and over 390,000 square kilometers of forest. That's bigger than the entire country of Norway. Despite the small population, it's been remarkably resilient, with 9 languages accepted as official languages of the region, other than English and French. Groups in the area are now working together closer than ever before, and collaborated to sign the Northwest Territories Project Finance for Permanence in October of last year, attracting $580 million from the Canadian government. It brings together government and private funding to protect the environment and local economy. First Nations people will now have more power over conservation efforts of the land, generating funding and managing the area. This kind of political action is creating a blueprint for Native groups all across the world to follow. The project has not been finalized yet, but it is expected to be finished before the end of 2024. But let's move down south of the border to the United States, where inhaler prices are dropping down to $35. In the United States, asthma is one of the most common diseases, affecting more than 27 million people, including myself. Worldwide, it caused almost 500,000 deaths in 2022. Most of these deaths could have been prevented by access to an inhaler, which works to either open constricted air passages or bring down inflammation. Up until now, the cost of inhalers in the United States has been as much as 30 times higher than the price of the same exact unit in Europe. One model, the Combivent Respimat, costs just $7 in France, but in the US, it's priced at $489. After campaigning from politicians, the price of inhalers is finally set to become much cheaper. 3 out of the 4 biggest inhaler manufacturers have announced that the units will be no more expensive than $35 in the United States. The price reduction is set to change millions of lives when it comes into effect in 2025. At long last, us asthmatics can breathe a sigh of relief. No pun intended. While we're talking about health, the US government has put the first limits on forever chemicals in drinking water. Perfluoroalkyl substances, better known as PFAs or forever chemicals, are dangerous compounds that take nature thousands of years to break down. They've been used in cookware, plastics, and clothing for decades, so much so that they can now be detected almost everywhere, even in our own bloodstream. They've been linked to liver disease and cancer, prompting governments to take action and avoid any more exposure. In the US, President Biden's administration has for the first time put in place legislation to limit the amount found in the public water supply. The laws limit the percentage to between 4 and 10 parts per trillion, depending on the PFAs. Since 2016, the guidelines have been at 70 parts per trillion, but the idea has been to lower those to as close to 0 as possible. The new laws, which will be enforced by the Environmental Protection Agency, put the responsibility on water providers to ensure that limits aren't exceeded. It's expected to cost around $1.5 billion per year in maintenance, but tens of thousands of deaths may be avoided over the coming decades. Our final story today comes from an underwater world near Chile, where more than 100 new species were found in seamounts. But before we continue, we'd really appreciate your support and your feedback in the comments. If you want to see more good news, make sure to subscribe to our channel to get your weekly dose of positivity. Okay, but now back to the video. When it comes to the ocean, scientists are only beginning to scratch the surface. Off the coast of Chile, researchers made a breakthrough earlier this year. A team on a Schmidt Ocean Institute expedition was able to map over 50,000 square kilometers. That's bigger than the size of Switzerland. Since only 5% of the ocean or so has been explored, the project was expecting to find new species of life, but the team had no idea the depths they would reach. In the process of exploration, they investigated 4 huge seamounts with an underwater robot, located in a place known as Salas y Gomez Ridge. Why? Seamounts can harbor a vast array of life, since the elevation on one end and the depth on the other are extremely different environments. On top of that, the location in Chile is especially unique because the clear water allows sunlight to reach deeper than anywhere else on Earth. What they discovered on this seamount was a thriving ecosystem with more than 100 new species. A second expedition, lasting about 40 days, was quickly put together, and the findings were just as exciting. Researchers observed bright blue deep-sea dragonfish and humongous thread creatures known as siphonophores, which can stretch up to 40 meters in length. Kinda spooky. Other species found were different kinds of corals, lobsters, and urchins in a kaleidoscope of color. So, what was your favorite good news story of the day? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.